The Bananas are playing a first ever NFL stadium of Banana Ball this Saturday.
Raymond
James. We're going to Ray J this weekend, no doubt.
And it's sold out.
Sold out immediately, like surplus of people who cannot get tickets to this game and are pretty disappointed by that. So it's sold out. Hellberg Barbecue is back. Like, everything's good right now. This is the perfect time to be alive. March Madness is here. I'm on the Pete Souza show. This is what people dream of.
Big 12 tournament kicking off today. We are with Drake Toll, obviously the host. The straw that stirs the Locked On Big 12 drink, and also the maestro. If you want to know what a maestro is and you're not sure, go see Drake work with the Savannah Bananas. That is a maestro right there.
Yeah, something like that, Pete. Maestro's maybe the right word. I think I need one of those. I need baton, whatever the maestros use.
All right, Big 12 tournament starts today, literally in a matter of hours. What teams do you think? I mean, it's almost like a fool's errand to ask you this question. Anybody playing today that has the ability to make any kind of run to get into the tournament?
I still believe in Cincinnati. They've shown us over the course of still a disappointing non-conference and a fairly disappointing conference slate as well that they have potential. I mean, every Big 12 team has gotten some kind of marquee win. Oklahoma State has double-digit wins at home this year. Even Colorado has a win against Baylor, or a win against TCU. And those TCU Horned Frogs who need to win to convince the nation that they deserve a tournament spot, or Kansas State, who likely has to win the Big 12 tournament, Arizona State, whose head coach is fighting for his job, and then UCF and Utah, who both sit certainly on the outside looking in. Everyone needs to win that is playing today in this Big 12 tournament. That's not the case for other schools that have already solidified their spot in March, need to rest, need to get healthy, but it only helps the Big 12 if from here on out, Cincinnati goes on a run, TCU goes on a run, UCF goes on a run, because those are the schools that are not going to march unless they win in Kansas City throughout the duration of this week. And if you're this conference and you want double-digit teams, 9, 10 teams in March, that's what's going to happen.
So that's a great point with UCF and Kansas State, like a magical run. Same with Cincinnati. If Arizona State loses today, is Bobby Hurley out of a job?
I think he has to be. And we hung on to that name for a long time. I've asked a couple of Arizona State sources, if his name was not Bobby Hurley, is he still the head coach there? And by and large, the answer is no. But you brought in a guy who was a legend, whose last name is legendary, whose brother is winning national championships, but he's not his brother. And I don't think that his coaching days should be over. I think about Bryce Drew, who goes to Vanderbilt, unfair shake, has some time to work things out, and then bam, they drop the hammer on him, goes to Grand Canyon, immediately wins the mid-major level. Shaka Smart goes to Marquette, goes to the Big East, leaves the bright lights of Texas, and starts winning again. I think Bobby Hurley can be in that category, but right now it's just not going to work at Arizona State. When we look at the SEC in football, you're a brand new head coach trying to revive, let's say, the Arkansas Razorbacks or the Mississippi State Bulldogs. That's an impossible conference to do that in. It's an impossible conference to build a program in. That's what the Big 12 is in basketball. If you want to walk in as a head coach and rebuild a program, this conference is very hard to do that. Bobby Hurley is not the guy right now.
All right, so I want to talk to you about NIL. You have a great big picture perspective on this conference. And some of the things I want to cover with you today are money and expansion. Who has the most money in the Big 12? Talking to Fraschilla when the Utah job came open, hey, I wouldn't take that job unless they tell me they've got a lot more money than it looks like they have right now, right? Like, who has the money to what you're saying, or to do what you're saying, to have a turnkey successful run, right? A program you can rebuild without a major overhaul.
As far as money goes, overall, it has to be BYU. And the perspective I want to put it in, imagine if Baylor was the only Baptist college in the country. Imagine if Notre Dame was the only Catholic college in the country, and they kind of are. They're the flagship of that. BYU is the university for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its members. So from there, a large swath of that very quickly growing faith is pouring money back into its alma mater, or the university that represents their values. Now there's BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, but Provo is the center of the universe for the LDS faith. And when it comes to their athletic department they root for, it's BYU. And the biggest member of that is Ryan Smith, who owns the Utah Hockey Club, who owns the Utah Jazz. And doesn't give a dime to the University of Utah Utes, despite his ties to Salt Lake City. Instead, where his father is a professor at BYU, he is doling out money to his alma mater to build a basketball program. They just hired the #1 assistant in the NBA to be their head basketball coach, and Kevin Young has done a spectacular job on the back end of year one, I should say, running what looks like an NBA program. He plays 10, 11 guys every night. And I was saying all through January, through half of February, stop, pick your 7, pick your 8, just find your crew, find your rotation. And he knows a lot more about hoops than I do, obviously, because they're the freshest team, the hottest team, arguably in the Big 12 right there with Houston right now. So BYU's pockets from NIL to really every other portion of their athletic department, especially as football's come along, is the richest school in the Big 12 conference. And as their brand grows, as that faith grows, that gap is only going to widen.
So do you see BYU setting itself up to be a powerhouse like football and basketball? Because now we're in a world, right, where the NIL is what moves the meter, right? Yeah, and we see with AJ DeBansta, right, going to BYU like that. I mean, that's the best player in the country, supposedly. So could they be a power football and basketball, like college football playoff Final Fours?
I know we're talking richest right now, but I want to look at a couple of like Houston's NIL valuation. We don't know exact numbers, but it's argued their football program has like $2.5 million for its NIL as a whole. AJ DeBansta is going to make more than that himself to play basketball, which is not the revenue sport that football is at BYU. So that just goes to show how far ahead of everyone else BYU is. And if money equates to being the best athletic department in the country, then BYU can be in that conversation. Now we know Texas A&M, they couldn't do it. They've got more money than they know what to do with, and they still can't win. There are programs like that. You know, Florida State's drop off in the last year. They've got the money to win every year. They still went 2-10. So there's a factor in this where you've got to put together the right coaching staff, the right roster, guys who want to play for you. I'm not saying that BYU should abandon the 2 or 3-star guy from Orem, Utah, who wants to be a BYU Cougar and develops into a great fifth-year player. They should continue to recruit those high school guys and make them great college athletes. However, they now have the capital to go build more out of the transfer portal to bring in 4- and 5-star guys in both football and basketball. They're in a very, very strong spot.
Any other teams in the Big 12 aside from BYU that have enough money to make a dramatic change moving forward here in the next few years with this change in the landscape?
Yeah, it's Texas Tech. Texas Tech has to be right up there with BYU for me. And I'm sure UCF will catch on. Houston, what the struggle is for me, Houston, even Colorado right now, who has an excess of income because of Deion Sanders, they're recovering from the last few years of losing football. And when your football team is lost consistently or even lost in the last few seasons, you're making the move up like Houston or UCF or Cincinnati did, you've got to make up for a decade plus where Baylor or TCU have made that Power 5 money. Now those schools are coming into their own. They're going to struggle, but Texas Tech is not. I mean, even Oklahoma State, as much as they would love for T. Boone Pickens to rise out of the grave and give back some money, these schools who have been there are going to be okay. The reason I bring up Texas Tech, the Matador Club, is maybe the best NIL collective itself in the entire Big 12. And they just opened a $245 million football facility too. So the facility arms race, they're right there. The Matador Club, they're right there. And I can tell you, I confidently tell you, you offer a kid $500,000, but we have a cool new hot tub and a podcast room. And another university offers him $2.5 million. That's a very different story. Kids are going to start betting on themselves, caring for themselves in the NIL era of college football. So if you're Texas Tech and you can not only offer a brand new hot tub and a podcast room, but also $2 million in NIL, that's where the Red Raiders are going to start to win.
And just as an aside to what you said, that's great insight, by the way, about, betting on yourself, but also the finances are there. Yeah. Tad Boyle, I flat out asked him last week. I said, is Deion doing anything for you guys, like recruiting wise? And he was just like, no, it really doesn't. It really hasn't moved the meter. And that gives you the idea of just how important money is over identity, over, it's just like, you can have the most exciting, the biggest lightning rod in the country at your school, unless he's making a dedicated effort to make money for a specific program, right? Or if you don't have the money for the alums, it's just not there. Or from the collectives, it's not there. It doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
No doubt. And part of this is the coach himself or herself. Like, think about Kim Mulkey at Baylor. There was a difference between Kim Mulkey and Baylor. I think about Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. There's a difference in who A&M is as a program and the coach. A lot of these players aren't committing to Duke necessarily. They were committing to play for Coach K. Not committing to Kentucky, they're committed to playing for Coach Calipari. You saw that with his mass exodus of players at university when he left. These kids fall in love with the coaches and the NIL more than they do the universities themselves, especially now more than ever. You think about the majority of the roster at Colorado, large majority. This goes for the same thing at Baylor, Texas Tech. They didn't grow up fans of Texas Tech. They grew up in South Georgia as a fan of the Bulldogs, but their best opportunity to play college ball was at Texas Tech. So that is where they're going. These kids are now committed to Joey McGuire. They're committing to a Kim Mulkey at LSU. They want to play for a coach. So they want to play for Deion Sanders. There's not a basketball player who gets to play for Deion Sanders when he commits to Colorado to play basketball. So that's a huge piece in this.
Hey, who is in the most trouble financially in the Big 12 as far as just a school that might be stuck in the mud because they don't have the resources to move out of the mud?
Again, Houston and Cincinnati come to mind at the very first. The problem for those two, Houston's the 7th, 8th biggest show in town because the Astros are there, because the Texans are there, because the Rockets are there. There are so many things to do on a Saturday night in Houston before you go to a Cougars football game. Does that mean that they're buried? No, but it's going to take a lot more to get out. Cincinnati, you have the Reds, you have the Bengals. So less people are concerned with college football there than they are the NFL. And we already know that's a tough product to compete with. Those two schools are at odds because many of their donors are sending money to the Astros first. They're buying a booth and going to see the Rockets play every weekend first before they're giving to the university itself. And then as far as these long-term tenured members of the Big 12 go, Iowa State, Jamie Pollard, their athletic director, has been very vocal about struggles with money in that university. He tweeted this out, I guess, yesterday, talking about how Arizona State will now bring in its athletic department as a part of the university, treating them as a college within the Arizona State brand. And Pollard said, I wish we could do that. It's another $50 million we can make from our university. He has now put on hold projects at Hilton Coliseum, and they have stalled a wrestling facility that was going to be built on campus, saying that he cannot move forward with those projects with the new revenue sharing model in college football. So Iowa State has been the most vocal about needing help with money because they just don't have enough right now to support what is going to be asked of this $22 million revenue sharing model that's coming soon.
Well, a lot of the money is, dependent on conferences and realignment and where we're going. That's why I talk to you, and this is no BS. That's why I listen to Locked On Baylor. Like, you do a great job of diving into the stuff that I just don't have the bandwidth for. Yeah. I mean, I really don't. I mean, like, I'm not as bright as you. You're younger than me. You hustle a little more. Like, you do a wonderful job of breaking this down on your show. Expansion, dude. Where are we going? Specifically with the Big 12? Because it's sort of like, I'm a forward-thinking dude, but I also I'm sitting here in the shadows of Villanova University where I grew up, right? I mean, like, that program, the Big East, has just changed so much over the last 4 or 5 years. ACC people. I mean, like, what is the ACC now? So where are we going with these conferences and with the expansion and realignment? What's the next move that you see happening?
To say that the ACC is unstable is something that it is objective now when you consider Stanford and Cal are members of that conference. We forget that a lot. We've kind of assimilated to the idea that Oregon's in the Big Ten. I think a lot of people are used to them on football, so many marquee games. Stanford and Cal weren't on TV very much in the ACC. We haven't wrapped our minds around it in totality. That league is kind of grasping at straws. And with their new money algorithm, this way that they're going to split up revenue based on how big your brand is, that's going to make schools like Louisville, Virginia Tech, NC State a little more upset, knowing that 1 or 2 bad years of football could bury them in the doldrums of the conference. And if they're making $6-7 million less in that year, that only puts you, as you mentioned, in the mud even more. So while Florida State and Clemson and Miami are all going to win here, schools like even North Carolina, who's in the middle of the pack from a viewership standpoint, will not exactly benefit from this new model where the ACC is going to pay you more based on your brand size. So that's the first thing to look at, is the ACC's instability. The second thing I look at is something we talked a lot about in the summer, this last summer, that's basketball. Gonzaga, what they bring to a conference like the Pac-12, and UConn, what they could bring to the Big 12, or San Diego State from basketball to football as well. And I just don't think Brett Yormark, with the instability of the ACC, is ready to take a basketball-only school, because what we know is that football keeps the lights on at the baseball stadium. There's no arguing that. Baseball doesn't make money outside of 3 or 4 universities in this country. It's not something that I'm, touting around. This is a good thing, but football is the bell cow. Yormark knows that. Even if UConn is generating $50 million a year in revenue in basketball, if they go 5 years of bad basketball, 5 years, they are automatically dead weight in your conference. That is understood about Gonzaga. It's understood about UConn. Anyone who makes their bet on basketball. So you look at the ACC, you've got to go there first and see Louisville, who would not be very happy with this new algorithm they've built, to a Virginia Tech, to an NC State. Even Georgia Tech could be a great addition to the Big 12. Brett Yormark says, we're open for business. We're always open for business to make moves that will benefit this conference. Those moves will likely come from the ACC. They won't be Memphis. They won't be USF. I believe Brett Yormark is holding out for the right move to bolster this conference, not add dead weight.
Could this happen over the course of the summer?
Yes. And the reason that it could is now Florida State and Clemson have the power to exit the ACC for a fee that's much less than the $500 million or $700 million people threw out there. Oh, well, if they want to leave, they got to pay all this money. Now you can start to expedite that process, given the fee to exit the conference is lower than we expected, sitting around that $175 million mark. Those schools can afford it. And the second they pony up that money to do so, now Louisville says, oh, we can kind of do that too. And from there, if North Carolina or Miami also follow the curtails of Clemson and Florida State, we understand this grant of rights and the TV deal with ESPN, that league has to keep 14 schools. They must keep 14 football schools. If they dip to 13, from there, a lot of their contracts are becoming null and void. That's when phone calls can happen between Louisville and the Big 12. That we saw it with the Pac-12. Once that grant of rights starts to seep those cracks, things start to seep through, it is an avalanche. So watch Florida State, watch Clemson. If they make a move this summer, Miami will do the same. North Carolina will too. And from there, it's mass chaos. But I can confidently say by 2030, when the exit fee is more like $70-ish million or less for those schools at the top of the ACC, something will have to give.
I mean, it's amazing. It's so much to bite off and try to chew on. When you talk about football in the Big 12, there's a loss taking place this offseason, and it's Travis Hunter and it's Shedeur Sanders, and we'll see what happens with Colorado next year. Obviously, the Deion brand is still there. What do you think about the coverage of Shedeur Sanders heading into the draft? The reason I ask is, I'm an ESPN employee, so I'm not looking to begrudge or talk poorly about my employer at all. I do find it interesting that people on other networks, or, Todd McShay's reporting on The Ringer about Shedeur Sanders, and maybe having a bad attitude during some of these meetings with teams, right? Yeah. And you don't hear it at all from ESPN, really, because we know what Deion's like when, you kind of cross a line with Colorado. Yeah. What do you make of all that? All that smoke and, the reporting around Shedeur, and are there reporters maybe holding back? Because when you talk about the draft and it being on ESPN, there's going to be a lot of Travis Hunter, a lot of Shedeur Sanders. You want Deion to be involved. That'll really move the needle. What do you make of all this stuff that's going on right now around Shedeur? Not so much Travis, but Shedeur recently heading up to the draft.
It's a very complicated situation. It's the same reason that, if somebody is a credentialed member of the media at a university, and you'll get this, the last thing you want to do is write an article, an opinion that says X coach should be fired, because then the SID at the university picks up on that and you're blacklisted from ever showing up to an event ever again. So you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you. And look, Colorado, Deion Sanders, he feeds a lot of the national media right now, for better or worse. People love controversy. When Deion takes a misstep, people love to pick it up. When Deion does something positive, they love to pick it up, because he's such a controversy is the right word. He's a controversial figure in sports. And now his son is getting roped into that. And we see what Bronny James, the whole Stephen A. Smith thing that happened last week. You are the son of a superstar, and the pressure that comes with that means the national media will talk. And many have talked negatively about Shedeur. I just see a confident kid in the same way that Cam Ward's confident, in the same way that Quinn Ewers has said some really confident stuff to the media over the course of the combine. That's what Shedeur Sanders is doing, but he's got the spotlight on him. The target's on his back because his last name is Sanders. His dad is Deion. Shedeur is a very confident quarterback. That's what I want in a program. But every year we hear this about some kid. A couple years ago it was C.J. Stroud. Oh, his IQ's not high enough. Oh, he can't pass this IQ test. Okay, now he's one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. People are, line out the door to watch him play.
Okay, yeah.
Right? That's what we see with Shedeur Sanders, is you're going to find something where the national media wants to write a headline, where somebody wants to write a headline. I think ESPN's done a good job of playing it down the middle with Shedeur, saying, look, he'll be a high draft pick. And we don't know about any of these guys, whether they're boom or they'll bust. And I don't doubt, knowing the moxie Deion carries, that maybe Shedeur walked into a meeting with the Giants and didn't take it as seriously as he did a meeting with somebody else, with the Patriots.
I think it's all calculated. I think it's all 100%. It goes back to, it goes back all the way to John and Jack Elway, right? Yeah. I mean, and then it goes back to the Mannings. This is nothing new. Yeah. So I like how they kind of can position themselves. Do you think Colorado next year will have the same, is this going to be a, when I was younger, it was Florida State didn't recruit, they reloaded, Are we looking now, is Deion the next Bobby Bowden in a sense, where he's going to get the best guys in the country to come play for Colorado year in and year out, that as long as he's there, there's going to be a turnover that includes the best athletes in the country? Or did we have an exceptional year last year because of Shedeur and Travis?
We've got to understand you're replacing a top 3 draft pick and the Heisman Trophy winner. No matter what program you are, that's going to be very hard to do. But Juju Lewis coming in at quarterback, the true freshman, will be a star for them. Caden Salter also coming in creates a massive storyline over the quarterback battle. How does Deion Sanders level this quarterback battle and create competition out of it in this spring? And my favorite part of what Deion did, he didn't go get 50 guys again in the portal. He said, you know what, let's get 20, 25 and have positive attrition. If you leave our program, cool. We'll plug and play. We'll fill the holes where we need it. We don't need massive overhaul. He brought his bags. They were Louis. They won last year. Their defense is going to be good again. And he's hiring NFL caliber assistants in his program as well. The fact that he didn't overload from the portal shows me he feels confident in the longevity of that program, the consistency of that program. And that's a really good sign for a coach. You look at G.J. Kinney, who's at Texas State, who brings in transfers year in and year out. It's just kind of what he does. We thought for a while, hey, Deion's going to run an AAU program, revolving door. No, he didn't do that this offseason. He wants to build stability in Boulder. That's a really positive sign.
All right, I'm going to let you out of here with one more thing. This is close to home for you. When we look at the NCAA tournament on the women's side, obviously that's all going to shake out detail-wise next week. But even if you look at the guy Charlie Cream's bracketology right now, there's a possibility that Baylor and LSU could meet in a regional final, right? Both of them are going to play their first couple games at home more than likely. Kim Mulkey, Nikki Collin showing off for a spot in the Final Four. Who you got, Drake?
Give me the Bears, right? You have to. I do believe that the last month of women's basketball at Baylor has not been indicative of what that program's true potential is, yet they've still been winning. To unpack that, Dariana Littlepage bugs when she is back. They said she's day-to-day. They're kind of giving her rest. Same reason I think some teams on the men's side and on the women's side did well to lose in the Big 12 tournament. Get rest, bring back your stars, get back in the practice gym, and put together the team that you really want for March when it comes to an injury or freshness standpoint. Baylor's going to do that. If they can come back at 90% strength or 100% strength playing at home in Waco for 2 games, I like their odds. From there, they've got as good a shot as anybody to compete with teams in the top 5, 10 in the country, though I do believe we're all battling for South Carolina, USC, UCLA. Those are the schools that will be in the Final Four and champions this whole thing when it shakes out. Baylor, I'm not sure will be in that conversation, but would love to see them whip up on the LSU Tigers and Kim Mulkey, who displayed her proud billboard in Waco a couple years ago. I
mean, that's why there's so much there. A lot of meat on the bone for guys like me and you who are familiar with Kim Mulkey and now Nikki Collin, and there's a lot of great stuff going there. All right, so Drake Toll, Locked On Baylor. It's funny. I knew you when you were a rising star. Now you're just a star. So Locked On Baylor, it's the first listen every day for everybody that likes the Big 12 and is passionate about it. And also Savannah Bananas Superstar. When you go to a Savannah Banana game, you're going to see Drake Toll front and center, and he is going to rock the party.
Fur coat, glasses, the whole shebang.
The whole shebang. Anything else, Drake Toll?
It's Pete. Hellberg Barbecue is back. I'm just giddy. It's back, man. I love it. It's always good to talk to you, my friend.
Good to talk to you too, brother. Thanks so much for spending the time today, Drake.
No doubt.
That was Drake Toll, the Pete Souza Show, presented by Slovaceks. Look at Drake. He's still there. We'll be back. We'll get Drake. Next time Drake's in West Texas, he's going to go to Slovaceks. And if he gets into an accident, he's going to call Daniel Stark. First one for sure. Second one, we hope not. The Pete Souza Show, presented by Slovaceks, coming back after this.